pitch would be the best thing to focus on. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time at the end of my slides here walking through exactly what that project pitch looks like and how we look at it as program directors. That process basically is something you have to go through and be invited to compete for a full phase 1 award from NSF. Okay, so first things first, our website with all the good stuff is here on the page. I would encourage you to go to seedfunds.nsf.gov. That has lots of information and also is the place you would go to do this project pitch, or you can just learn more about the program, look at how we review things, look at our portfolio, that sort of thing. So please make a note of that if you haven't gone. I think it's very, very helpful for new folks. Okay, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes going through really a brief primer about how we think about this program at the National Science Foundation. So again, I'm not a big one for mission statements, but I want to point out a couple of things here on the slide about how we think about this program. The first thing you should pick out here is the word startups. We are a really startup-focused agency. In terms of the metrics, our portfolio is a dramatically high number of brand new and very small companies than any other SBIR program. I'll show you some data on that. But again, we're looking to fund companies that are just getting started and therefore, in most cases, also have a technology that's just getting started maybe from the lab into the market. We're looking for high impact and high risk technology, and we're looking to fund it very early. The next part of my slide that I really want to emphasize is this transformation we're looking discovery or innovation into products and services for commercial impact. We are really an agency that only gets a benefit. We only really get excited. We get our return on our investment only when your company commercializes. We do not have any other direct value that we see in your technology. We're not going to use your technology. We don't have any specific interest in one area or one type of product over another. We want to put all of those decisions back into your hands. We want to support what you think is the best, highest value of your technology and of your company's time. And our goal is to help you de-risk, to go from a risky, unproven technology and a risky, unproven company and take that first step toward a proven, known quantity, successful company that is stable and sustainable and scalable. Oh, let me go back one. I mentioned this, but just to show you, I know you've probably heard from a lot of agencies that have a very strong focus in certain technical areas. You've heard a lot about topics. I put this slide up not to kind of explain which topics we focus, but to really make the point that NSF does not have a topical focus. We basically fund any area that is proposed, and the ratios on this pie chart are basically some slices are larger or smaller because we get more proposals or fewer proposals in that area. It does not indicate a preference for us. It indicates that this is the areas where we get the most entrepreneurs applying, and so the funding rate across different large technology areas is more or less constant, more or less flat, I should say, not constant. We are a medium-sized SBIR agency. Our funding is a little larger now. It's about $260 million last year. That translates into about 300 new phase 1 awards that we make per year. Okay, a couple of data points. I mentioned startups. More than half of our phase 1 awards were from first-time applicants. Not meaning it's the first time you've gotten an award, meaning it's the first time that company has ever applied to the National Science Foundation. So this is a data point that is actually, I think, unprecedented in anywhere else in the government. So what this should mean to you is that you should not feel like you need to be experienced and seasoned to compete for our funding. Again, just to make the point, most of the companies we fund are small. 2 employees is the average and the median company size at phase 1. Lastly, most of the companies we fund are brand new. This is basically the time from the company's incorporation or formation to the phase 1 award date. The average time there is 2 years, and as you can see here, very few companies are very old that we fund. Last thing I'll say is just to give you a sense of the scale of our program. This is over the last 10 years. We've funded about 3,200 awards to about 3,100 different small businesses. Across that decade, that adds up to something between $1 and $2 billion of NSF investments into those 3,000 plus companies. And the same time period saw that portfolio of companies raise 28 billion just in private sector investment. So that's about a 20-to-1 ratio. Every dollar we put in, companies then went on to raise $20 of private sector funding. And this is typically the only path that we see that's a viable path for the kind of risky, high-tech, deep tech companies that we fund, is that after the government puts in a few $1 million, a lot more capital and time is needed to get them to a marketable, commercialized product. So our goal, in part, as an agency, is to get you started and get you in a place where you can think about that next check, that next investor, that next funding round that NSF is not going to be able to support. The good news is that if you get funding from NSF, your company is in a pretty strong position to get a successful outcome. In most cases for our companies, that is an exit, meaning the company is acquired or goes public, which basically gives them the stability and the sales channels and the partnerships to scale their technology to a broad audience or globally. And so most entrepreneurs, that's what they're looking for at the end of the day, is to sell their company, because that's the best thing to get the technology out to make an impact in the world. And over 400 of our companies have done that over the last decade. All right, a little bit more going from philosophy into tactics. Just because people ask how much our awards are, this is the amounts of the NSF awards. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I recommend you really just focus on phase 1 if you're new. I will point out that phase 2 starts at $1 million, and there's an additional funding source called phase 2B, where if you're able to raise third-party investment or product sales or otherwise get capital in that's related to your NSF project, you can then make that $1 million phase 2 award into a $1.5 million phase 2 award. All right, now I'm going to start to pivot towards the main focus here, which is this project pitch process. This is, by the way, from our website. You can dig in and click around and learn more about all of this. But step 2 and 3 here are the 2 steps in our review process, essentially. So in order to get a phase 1 award, you'll need to submit a project pitch, be invited, and then submit a full proposal and be funded. I'll talk about the project pitch in detail in a second. I will point out a couple of things. The full proposal is pretty involved, requires government registrations, takes a fair amount of work, and does take us 5 to 6 months to decide. So this is not a fast process. I mentioned this yesterday. The project pitch is pretty fast. It's on the order of weeks. It's open anytime, and you will get feedback pretty quickly. So I'm going to zero in on the project pitch. For those of you who are past that step and are looking at the full proposal, or if you're just interested in learning more about the full proposal, the best thing that you can do is to look up a document called the solicitation. So if you go to our website and you go to this link at the top here, you click on the full proposal link, you'll see the solicitation. That document is the Bible for submitting the full proposal, which is, again, the second of these 2 steps. I'm not going to talk about that today, but you're welcome to get that information at your own time. All right, I'm going to zero in on the project pitch and just talk a little bit about why we do it and how you should think about it. Again, the real goal here is motivated by the fact that we are looking at a lot of companies who are brand new, small, early stage companies who've never worked with the government before. And there's a lot of misunderstanding and confusion from that community about what we're looking for and what's a good fit for our program. So the idea behind the project pitch was to create a process where people like that can get quick feedback on what they're doing, with the theory being that the second best answer an entrepreneur can get is a quick no. So the project pitch is really a way for us to gauge appropriateness and fit of your project with the National Science Foundation's programs. The project pitch is especially important because the NSF has been pretty aggressive about marketing our program, especially to places that are maybe less commonly served by these programs. And so we do have an especially high percentage of people who are brand new to this whole government funding thing. I will say there's a whole bunch of requests for slides in the sidebar here. I don't know. I hope I get a copy of this chat, but let me throw my email into chat. And if you, for some reason, I don't get the slides to you, I'm going to, if you email me, I will send them out by email. Oh, sorry about that. Am I on again? I don't know what happened there. Okay, I'm back. Awesome. Let me reshare my slides. I'm sorry about that. Okay. As I mentioned, oh, you can't hear me. 1 second. Oh, Jen says she can hear me. Okay, looks like folks can hear me.
Yes, Ben, we can hear you.
I'm getting conflicting chats. I'm sorry about that. It looks like we're okay now.
All right, you're all squared away? We're good?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Jamil.
Okay, all right.
Okay, back to where we at a time from your company, whatever your company is doing. If you submit a project pitch, the understanding is we are going to look at it, give you a response. Until you hear back from us, please do not submit a second project pitch. We asked folks to give us up to a month to turn those around, but the average time to respond is about 2 weeks right now. Okay, the project pitch is a pretty simple to understand. It asks for some basic information, and then it asks 4 questions. And I'm going to walk through each of those questions and explain, try to explain what we're looking for and why we ask these questions and what you're intending for you to talk about. Let me walk through these one by one, and I'm happy to take questions about these. This is more or less the last big part of my talk here, and then I'm happy to dive in deeper. Okay, the first question you're going to be asked, and you're going to be given about 2 paragraphs for this, I think it's 500 words, is to talk about the technological innovation. And again, this is really about what is the new way of doing things that is at the heart of both the project you're going to pitch to NSF and of the new product or service that you're hoping to create to bring to market. This is the most important question in the project pitch. It is the place where your answer is most likely to result in a non-invitation. And when we talk about innovation, it's really important to understand what we mean by that. We have a very high bar for innovation. We're really looking for things that are just dramatically, disruptively different ways of doing things that feature a pretty significant requirement for R&D because they are unproven, and the way of doing things may turn out not to work at all. It may be something that turns out to be impossible once you try to do it. And we're looking for that innovation to also ideally give your company just a totally different product that just works better or totally differently, much cheaper, much bigger, much faster than anything else that's in the market that's kind of attacking the same need in the market. I will point out, a lot of people kind of think, oh, innovative may just mean it's different than what's out there. maybe it's something that no one has done. None of those is sufficient to prove to us that you're innovative enough for this program. We really need to look at what you're doing and say, number one, it seems like no one's done this before. Number two, it seems like it's risky and might not work. That's actually a good thing. Number three, it requires time and effort that are commensurate with our award, which is to say years and maybe millions of dollars to just get the product proven, right? So we're looking for those things, the risky technology, totally disruptively different, and requiring intensive R&D. And the other thing you should talk about or try to prove to us in this section is, why can't somebody else do the same thing? Why can't the next group of whizzes in your field copy what you're doing? What is it about that's unique to you? Not just because you're the only one with the idea, but because you're the only team that could pull this off. And even if somebody else had your idea, they could not replicate this and neutralize your advantage. Okay, so that's really a critical piece of the project pitch. The second question we ask, again, up to 500 words that you have, is to really talk about what you need money to do. We're asking you to tell us, why is NSF funding important to your company? What is R&D going to do for you? What questions is it going to answer? What is it going to prove? How is it going to move your product forward toward the market? How is it going to reduce technical risk? This should be something that, again, looks like R&D and not just engineering or just straightforward product development. R&D typically means it's a little bit uncertain how to do it. It's a little bit uncertain what the outcomes will be. And you could have some things that are unexpected along the way. And so again, we're looking for making sure what you're trying to do falls into that definition of R&D, because that's the only thing Congress lets us pay for. And we really want to also see that R&D is critical for your company in a commercial sense, right? Your customers need X property. They need to show Y thing. And R&D is the way to show that, and therefore to take the next step toward commercializing your products, okay? And so it's really important to understand, we want you to commercialize, we want you to focus on that, but we can't pay for those activities directly in most cases. And so we really need to understand how this specific type of activity is right now critical for your company in the near term to move and take the next step to become a successful company. So those are the two biggest questions we ask. There's two more that are important but not as critical, especially because they just provide context for us. The market opportunity, to some extent, the fact that a customer has a need that you're going to try to address is the most important thing for your company. But at this project pitch stage, it's not the most important thing, because we're not doing a deep diligence on the market at this point. We will do that in the full proposal if you get to that step. But we're really trying to understand in this section, what does your customer look like? Where do they live? What are they worried about? In terms of not your customers, meaning the clean energy market, but the specific person who works at a utility company, right? We really want you to get into detail about those early few people who are your key first customers. And so customer discovery and ICOR, things like that are really important here. But we really want to see if you started to think about the early adopters and the early problems that your technology and your product could solve. The last question we ask is just to understand maybe the most important thing about your team, which is the people. We're also looking in this section at what is the kind of history of the company. Maybe you're brand new, that's fine. But if you've been around and doing stuff as a company, that would be great to see what that looks like. We're looking for team members, and we're looking for just, to get a little bit to know about the company, which is going to be, if you're successful, the company is going to be the recipient of our funding. And so we want to understand a little bit about the company and about the key people who are going to do the work and who are going to make the commercial success happen. Okay, so you're going to go to our website, you're going to fill out this form, answer these 4 questions. And then within typically a few weeks, you'll be responded to. Your proposal will go to one of the program directors who is the closest fit as far as we can tell with the technology area that you're in. So there are 14 program directors. I'm one of 14. We all have different portfolio areas. And we're going to try to figure out which of those program directors is the right fit for your project. They're going to respond to you, and they're going to either tell you you're invited or you're not invited. If you're invited, they'll give you some feedback. They'll give you an email that gives you 1 year to submit. And then the idea is that within that 1 year, you are expected to submit a full proposal, in which case you'd start to think about reading the solicitation, getting your government registrations done if you haven't done that, and moving forward. And there's lots of other resources about the full proposal that we can talk about. If you are not a good fit, if you're not invited, you'll be told that you're not invited to move forward, but you'll also be told why. What is the reason we don't think you're appropriate for the program? And then you're welcome to revise the project pitch if you feel like you can fix the issue, or you can submit a different project pitch for a different project. You have to wait till the next window, which is about every 4 months. We can talk in detail about the timing there if needed. I will point out that for those of you, we invite about half of these pitches. About half of them are invited, about half of them are not invited. For the ones that are not invited, there are 2 dramatically more common reasons why. 2 reasons are the lion's share of all the non-invitations. The 2 reasons that we typically don't invite a full proposal are, number 1, that innovation threshold has not been crossed. What you're doing might be useful, commercially viable, interesting, but it doesn't have the level of differentiated approach, the level of technical risk, the level of R&D intensity, the level of competitive advantage that makes you a good fit for us. That's the most common reason that we think you're not a good fit. Really, our level of our bar to clear for innovation and differentiated product is very high. The other very common reason why you might not get invited is that it doesn't appear to us that what you're trying to get funding to do is something that we can or want to pay for. And so in many cases, your company might not need to do R&D to move forward. That might not be the right thing to do right now. It might not be something you ever have to do. And so maybe it seems like an innovative product, but the work you're doing, we just don't see how that's going to really make a huge difference commercially for your company. Maybe your company needs money to do marketing. We can't pay for that. Maybe your company needs money to do evaluation of an existing product. That can't be a full proposal. We can't just have you testing something that already exists. So there's a few other reasons we don't invite project pitches, but those are the 2 by far biggest reasons. Lack of sufficient innovation and novelty, and asking for funding to do things that are not appropriate for our program. That's what I've got. I hope I didn't talk for too long. I put our general contact information here. I think I threw my email in the chat, but I can do that again. But I am going to, I know there's a bunch of folks who want to ask questions. I'm not sure if it makes sense. We have a lot of people writing chat. So I think what I'll start to do is try to take a few of the common questions from the chat to try to address them. And I suspect with over 300 people in here, I'm not going to get to everything. But let me just answer a couple of the questions that I've heard from with common questions. Okay, let me go scroll back up here. Okay. A couple of quick questions that we get a lot. A question from Myrna: are there cases where a company can go to phase 2 directly? In other words, skip phase 1. At NSF, you cannot. There's a few other agencies where you can, the Department of Defense, Department of Education, and I think maybe the DOE or ARPA-E. But in our case, you have to do phase 1 first, partly because honestly, the companies we fund are so small that $1 million might be too much for them to digest at the stage, but also partly because we really value the opportunity to work with you at phase 1
before we have to make a phase 2 decision. That's a very key part of information for us in making those phase 2 awards. So it would be hard for us to commit $1 million to a company we hadn't worked with. Okay. The next question is, I saw it here and now I don't have it. Okay. Question from Lois. Do you require an academic partner? Do you require a PhD for the PI? The answer to both of those questions is no. If your project needs a certain expertise, technical expertise, that's not part of your company. In some cases, an academic partner can help you provide that, but it's not required. As far as the PI, like the most important thing for the PI is that they have the ability and the level of understanding of the project to be able to execute the project and to serve as the official point of contact with NSF to execute the project. Sometimes that person, it's best for them to have a very deep technical expertise, but not always. So we have lots of PIs without PhDs. I actually had a PI for one of my phase 2 companies who actually had never graduated college. He just happened to be one of the best people in the world to build high temperature furnaces for melting refractory metals in the middle of Maine, actually. So yeah, we try to encourage PIs from all different walks of life if they have that ability to represent the company as the point of contact for the project. Larry asks, what if you have more than one innovation with the company? We are always about focus in this program. So I think, again, this process requires you to, like you said, pick one and then move that one innovation all the way through this process before you consider a second project. Typically, if you have a couple things you're doing and you're not sure what to propose, I would encourage you to propose the products or the market opportunity that is top priority for your company. We really want to support companies to work on what really makes them tick. We don't want to fund you to do something that is not in your heart as the key thing that you want to do with your company. We really want to support the top, most important priority. Partly because what we're trying to get you to do is very difficult, and if you're not really passionate about it, it's going to be hard to get done. And that both counts for the technology R&D, but also for the commercialization. And partly because we think it's important that companies do focus, and if you're doing, say, 2 different risky technologies at the same time, that's a lot of risk to take on for a small company. In my experience as a program director, having worked with 200 plus companies in my portfolio, none of them have done 2 different technical things well and brought them both to commercial success. It's very rare for any small company to do 2 difficult technologies well in terms of commercializing the market. So I would encourage all of you who are doing these kind of projects to focus on doing one thing well. Question from Hema. Does NSF provide any preferential considerations for women-owned and minority-owned startups? Also, first-time early investigators in the funding process. So the focus of we have merit review criteria for our program. One of them is broadening participation, and that goes for women-owned and minority-owned startups. It goes for investigators who are underrepresented. It goes for company founders and owners who are underrepresented, and also in geographical underrepresented areas. So we definitely consider that pretty strongly and try to make our portfolio as diverse as possible. I do think we've made a lot of good progress on that. We definitely have the highest rate of women-owned companies in the SBR world. Last time I checked, there was a report that came out. We still have work to do there, but our portfolio and our pipeline have gotten much more diverse in that sense, and so that's a very important piece for us. As for the preference for first-time early investigators, I mean, that's kind of our thing. So yeah, I mean, almost all the companies we fund are both our first-time investigators, first time from a company awardee standpoint, and first time in most cases from a PI standpoint. The most common model, but not the only model for our companies, is that the person who's getting the award as the PI just left the university, just left their job, and is doing this whole government funding thing for the first time in their career. So yeah, that's definitely we don't need an actual preference there because that's really the thesis of our whole program. There is a question here from Jed, and I think this is relevant to the discussion of innovation and how product needs to be sufficiently innovative for us. The question is whether a utility patent basically means that you qualify as innovative enough. And the answer is no. It can correlate. It tends to be a good thing, but there are actually a lot of utility patents that either don't have the level of kind of technical innovation that we look for, but more common, they don't have the level of risk and R&D requirement that we're looking for. And so there are cases where a patent is either, it may be patented or patentable, but it's not something that requires a huge amount of R&D to make it to a product. Or maybe it's something where the patent itself doesn't really, it's not a patent on a something that would be considered disruptively different from what else is in the market. So having a patent can help. It can definitely be part of that argument, but it's not sufficient for sure. Here's a really important and common question from Ophir. Are the reviewers of the pitch and later those of the full proposal under NDA? So the reviewers of the pitch are all NSF staff, and we are all effectively under pretty significant employment standards and sanctions to disclose nothing inappropriately. The reviewers of the full proposal are sometimes external to the NSF, and they are under a non-disclosure agreement, the government's version of a non-disclosure agreement. So yes, everybody essentially is under NDA. By the way, the information you submit as part of a pitch and as part of a full proposal, none of that is ever released for any reason except for to that small group of reviewers for review, and nothing ever becomes public unless there's a FOIA request. FOIA requests are very rare, and even in those cases, you have a chance to protect anything sensitive. So our process is quite tight in terms of information security, I believe. I've never seen information misused or somehow the fact that they submitted information to our process harm a company that's submitted in 15 years at NSF, and I've reviewed over 3,000 proposals. Ophir also asks if they don't have IP by the time they submit, how problematic is that? It's hard to tell what you mean by IP here. If you don't have any formal IP, that's probably fine. You don't need formal IP to demonstrate innovation. You don't forfeit any rights to IP by applying to us. We don't represent a public disclosure, and so I don't think it's problematic if you haven't kind of established a formal IP position as a company. Anthony asked a similar question about how IP rights work with awardees. So I'll talk about this. This is a very common question. The first thing to know is that any intellectual property that you come into this engagement with, that exists prior to us giving you an award, is yours. It never gets touched by the government. Your award doesn't change your ownership. If you develop IP as part of our award, if we pay you to do some work and that work results in new IP, that IP is covered by what's called a government march-in right. If you're interested in looking at this, it's a law called the Bayh-Dole Act, and it covers all federal funded research. The Bayh-Dole Act covers the IP rights. This government march-in right essentially gives the federal government what is equivalent to a fully paid up worldwide irrevocable license to practice your technology if the government deigns that there's some national need that's critical and they want to march in and use your technology. In order for them to do that, they have to file a march-in petition. There's a big legal process. I'm not a lawyer, but I will say that the government, since the program, the SBIR program has started in 1982, the government has made about 160,000 SBIR awards across all these agencies. And the march-in rights, I believe, have never been exercised for any of those awards. So the march-in rights, as of yet, remain a theoretical possibility for all of you. But understood that it is something to contend with, and so you should be comfortable with that right if you apply. Judy asked about I-Core. It sounds like Judy went through I-Core and wanted to know where to mention it in the project pitch or the full proposal. Yeah, you could definitely mention I-Core in either the project pitch or the full proposal. It would typically be in the section about the customers or the market. But yeah, there's no hard and fast rule to that. Okay. Amelia asks, yesterday you mentioned that we can apply for SBR funds by multiple agencies, but we cannot use funds on the same thing at the same time. Just so I'm crystal clear, could we use funds from different agencies to work on different innovations within the same product? Yes, you could, as long as the work is different work. It doesn't have to be different innovation, it has to be different work, if that makes sense. And if you're not clear what qualifies, we can talk offline about the details. Jacqueline asks, or says that the process from pitch to proposal submission is lengthy. Startups must push forward, mostly just in case we don't receive funding. So how does the NSF view this if the startup moves forward? So maybe the pitch does not accurately reflect the project status at time of proposal submission. We try not to punish companies for moving forward. I agree, you should move forward. That's good. That's a good sign, not a bad sign that you're not waiting. Typically, again, the scope of things that we're going to invite to submit a full proposal have years of R&D and years of technical risk to retire. So it's usually not the case that by moving forward in such a way, you're going to somehow move out of our window where we want to fund your company, because there's going to be lots of technical risk, even if you move forward. But if you really think things have changed dramatically, you may want to reach out to the program director who invited you to let them know and see if they want you to change anything. In most cases, we're not going to require a new project pitch, and that's true for the full proposal as well. Larry asks, what if you have more than one innovation from the company? We covered that. Nate asks, does NSF ever award single member companies, or is 2 members the minimum? Yeah, we do award single member companies. There's a significant fraction of those in our portfolio. If you only have one person in your company, you might need to allocate some of the funds to people outside your company. It sometimes is hard to spend that amount of money with just one person, but yeah, that's doable. Okay. Sam asks whether NSF is the path for Department of Education submissions. We do have lots of companies in the learning and cognition technology space working on education, but the Department of Education is a separate agency. They do have their own separate SBIR program. I'm going to take a couple more here, and then I'm going to just take a look and see if people want to actually kind of jump up on stage and ask questions in person. I'm just curious whether I'm missing people. So 1 second. This is a good question from Matt about innovation. Matt says, I can see how a team could be fully qualified for an innovation, and the innovation could be novel, but what sorts of ways will people convince us that that they're the only group in the world to be able to accomplish the technology? Typically that is either referencing something that's patented in a certain way that it's difficult for other people to practice. Maybe there's a trade secret that only your company knows about. Maybe you all just have a talent on the team that knows the field better than anybody else in the world. Those are typical ways to do it. It is true that, we want you to make that argument. We know that not everybody is going to be able to say we're the only group in the world, but at least try to make an argument that it's difficult for the next group of people who are the same background, technical background, to do the same thing exactly right. We want the fact that you have this technology and that you're getting funded by us to build it out. We want that to represent a barrier to entry for your competitors. We want that to build a moat around your company. And that's one of the ways we get at that. Loretta asks, what is the weight of the research/credential in a topic being pitched? Meaning, is there a need for someone on the team to have published, worked in the area, and past performance in the area being pitched? I would say, I would not call it a credential that's important. I think the most important thing in terms of the capabilities of the team is the ability to carry out the work you're proposing. It doesn't mean you have to have published in the past, but in some fields, you may propose work that's, this work is pretty risky. It's pretty out there in many cases. And so we are going to want to see that the people involved have some indication that they have the right training to carry that out. It obviously depends a lot on the fields. If you're going to be, splicing genes, there is a certain level of probably degrees and maybe even publications that might be helpful to show that you can do that. If your company is doing new software for education, there may be some pedagogy stuff there that maybe is a different type of background, but it may be a separate set of skills. So really, we want an alignment between the work you're doing, which again represents this unique approach, and the team and the qualities of the team. All right, let me just see. I'm going to just try this. I'm sorry, I'm going to run an experiment, everybody. I just want to see if I can pick folks who haven't asked questions to come up and ask their questions in person. Maybe somebody who have not answered their question in chat here. So I'm gonna say, let's try Deanna Parker. I'm gonna approve your request and let's see how this works. And if you don't want to put yourself on video or you don't want to ask a question anymore, feel free to not, and I'll go to somebody else. And I think I'm going to take my slides down unless people need them.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
There, it just took a second for it to process.
No problem.
Thank you for selecting me. Just wondering, and this was very detailed. I really appreciate the information that's being shared.
Sure.
Just wondering, we're a company that's been in the government contracting space for, still small, but been in the for quite a few years. And just, I see that, you really do favor a lot of those smaller startups, less than 5 years. How, obviously, I think I know what your answer is going to be. It just needs to be innovative and it needs to meet those standards. But, do you kind of weight very heavily those new startups, or are you still encouraging those who've been in the contracting space for a while to apply?
I think the way that to look at this, and it's a good question. I didn't get very deep into this because this is not typically a major focus of the project pitch, but it is a major focus of the full proposal. Our focus is on making sure that our funding is moving the needle for the company that it's going into. And so one way to make sure that the funding is going to be really critically impact the trajectory of the company is to make sure that the company is new, it's just getting started, it doesn't have a lot of funding already. And kind of by definition, if our funding represents a multiple more funding than the company's ever had, that's kind of impactful. That's not the only way to be impactful, but that's obviously one way to make it very likely. If you are an existing company, the most important thing that you can do is, first of all, show that if you have had similar funding in the past, that you have produced the kind of commercial outcomes that we're looking for, and that you can show that our funding, even though maybe your company has had other funding, our funding is still really impactful given what you need to do and what opportunity you're trying to go after. And this sometimes comes into, honestly, our phase 2 process or phase 2B. Some of our companies grow so fast and become successful so quickly that we had a company that we funded in phase 1. They only had 2 employees. They didn't have any funding. When they got to phase 2B, when they had money that they wanted us to match, the company had raised $120 million in private funding. And it's a great company. It's a hugely impactful technology, but at that point in time, it's unclear what our additional funding can do. So obviously, that's kind of the way you have to look at this as an existing company, is how can you demonstrate to NSF that you're moving the needle, and that, especially if the government has funded you before, how will additional government investment return in a meaningful way the investment? If that makes sense.
It does, and you definitely answered my question. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, that worked pretty well. Let me try to find. I'm trying to find people who haven't already asked through the.
Hey there.
Hi.
I appreciate all the helpful information. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
My business has recently received an Air Force contract for an SBIR Phase 1.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it's been amazing being in the SBIR world, seeing all the different agencies, and NSF is one that we're really looking after for future projects. We have an amazing raw material that's carbon negative. It's applicable to many industries. And with the Air Force, they have open topics 3 times a year. We can submit as many pitches as we like per submission. And I understand that NSF is only 1 pitch per submission window. I guess for me, it's really endless opportunities for the pitches, but I'm wondering if there's, I live in Alexandria. I know the NSF office is there. Sorry, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Are there resources available or people we can work with before we're developing these pitches that can maybe push us in the right direction or help categorize our product into the different focus groups? Anything like that? What are your thoughts?
I mean, in terms of topics, I would just ignore that topics. I mean, you should just, one of the things we do with the project pitch is we actually use it to route you to the right topic, but you're never going to suffer a negative effect for not picking the right topic in NSF. We may shift you around based on what you said in the project pitch, but by the time you get that project pitch response, you will know where you fit. And it's not a factor in our decision. I know at the Air Force, it probably is. Because they have certain things that the agency needs in certain areas, and they have some other areas that they don't need anything. And that's a lot of the times how they decide. We don't need anything, right? We're an investor more than a customer in that way. And so we don't see any need to constrain the universe of possibilities that your company can be working on, just like any investor, right? We want to give you freedom to pursue what gets you up in the morning, because that's the way we get the commercialization typically. So I think the only thing you need to worry about in terms of fit for NSF is thinking about that scalable commercial opportunity with the high technical risk that fits what we're trying to do here, and also is a high priority for your company. That would be the way I would think about it.
Okay, cool. And are you guys participating in STTRs as well, or is it just SBIR? Yeah,
we do participate in STTR. I didn't mention that because really in our program, we've tried to make these programs almost interchangeable. There are some budgetary differences, but it's something that doesn't make sense for you to use your calories worrying about it. If you get invited, we can talk about whether you want to apply for STTR, but it doesn't actually make a difference which one you choose. One way or the other, we're going to find, if either of those programs fits what you're trying to do, we'll try to find a path for you.
Okay.
But yeah, there's no strategic way to choose one or the other for us, like the regular agencies.
Good to know. Historically, STTR has a better acceptance rate for at least Air Force. So I'm not sure kind of what the NSF looks like. If we submit an SBIR, because we have some university partners that are going to be co-sponsoring with us no matter what, whether it's SBIR or STTR. And with the Air Force, we can submit both. We can submit an SBIR and an STTR for each pitch. And then we would decide based on the awardal. But for NSF, yes, we don't have to worry about the product category because you guys will do that anyways. And I guess if we win an SBIR, do we have the option to do it as an STTR and vice versa, or is that not?
If your project's budget is compliant with STTR, then we have the ability to fund it either way.
Okay.
So you would submit one project, and we can talk to you if we like the project about what makes sense, and we can work that out later on in the process.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I think that's it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, AK.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, I think I said I was
happening right now with large language models. To host and train a model, as well as the data that's backing it up, can be between 10 and 20K a month. Does that fit into the concept of the R&D budget and what this funding is pointed towards?
I mean, it's a $275,000 award. So if you need to do that for a year, that would eat up pretty much the whole budget, and that might be hard to make sense because you don't have a lot of money to do something else. So yeah, I mean, Congress gives us these limits, and we're pretty flexible, but you definitely have to figure out a way to fit a scope of work that's going to hopefully attack some big technical risks into that limit of 275,000. I think again, the best way to encourage you to think about this, tackling this, is if you get invited, based on the project pitch, which I think doesn't require you to make this decision about how to allocate funds, then to talk to the program director about this issue with the budget and figure out if they have some advice about that. Again, I'm not an AI ML person, but Peter and Parvathy, who run those areas, know a lot more about what makes sense in terms of how to get technical work done in that field.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks. Lita asked about how many pitches does NSF get a month or a year. We get about 8,000 to 10,000 pitches per year, and we invite about half of them. This is a great question. I don't think I emphasized this. This question is from Hamid. Do we need to register the company before submitting the project pitch? No, there is no prerequisite to submitting the project pitch. And in fact, we made sure when we created it that it was outside all the government bureaucracy. You don't have to even have a company to submit a project pitch. You just have to have an idea. And I would encourage you to not do that stuff unless you're sure, because it's painful, and unless the government is going to give you money, there's no point to do it. Here's a question from Nicholas. How should we interact with program managers prior and after the pitch process? Again, we are all startup people, tech transfer people, lab to market people. We love entrepreneurs. We love working with companies. That's the most fun part of our job. So we would love to spend all day working with entrepreneurs. There's a demand supply problem there because there's just so few of us and so many of you. And so you're welcome to ask questions, especially after the project pitch process, but we have a limitation on how much bandwidth that we have to be able to do that. So if you're able to go through all of our other sources of information and our webinars and things, and you can't get your question answered, you're welcome to reach out to the program director. But in many cases, we don't have the bandwidth to have an extended conversation until you get an award. And if you get an award, you will work pretty closely with your program director. But until then, you're welcome to ask them questions, but sometimes it may be hard to get quick answers because each of them has essentially, again, 1,000 pitches per year that they look at, and then about 800 or 1,000 and something like 400 or 500 pitches that are invited at any time, plus about 50 companies they funded at any time. So it's a lot of people. Question from Dorothy about software proposals, asking to share more specific examples or expanded examples of phase 1 deliverables, e.g. proof of concept data, testing results of product under development, etc. There's a pretty good amount of flexibility about what the specific deliverables in phase 1 would look like. The best way to think about phase 1 is that you've proposed in your project pitch technical questions to answer, technical challenges to overcome. The best way to think about the phase one work is to figure out what work would best address those challenges or answer those questions. So sometimes certain data would do it. Sometimes some kind of little pilot or evaluation would do it. Sometimes it's something else. Really, you want to tailor the work to how to best convince yourself of those questions or how to best address those risks that you talked about in the project pitch. Could be prototype, proof of concept, could be something else. It's pretty flexible, but we want to see how it ties back to reducing that technical risk that you talked about and that we want, that we're looking for, and that we invited you because you have it. And now you're trying to start getting funding from us to get rid of it, right? Get rid of all that technical risk. Because at the end of the day, you need to be a company that has a product that works every time. A question from Shirin. If we are focused on STEM innovations in the AI gaming space for kids, which project do we recommend we pitch to? Again, so the choice of topic is not important because you're going to end up where we think you fit either way. But if you're doing STEM innovations in the AI gaming space for kids, I would start with learning and cognition technologies as a topic. That's most likely where you fit. Okay. Gary asks, how heavily weighted is social benefit when evaluating a pitch or proposal? Social benefit is evaluated pretty strongly at the proposal stage. And obviously, in most cases, you need some commercialization case to have societal benefit, because if your company goes under, you're not going to benefit anybody. But at the pitch stage, we typically, it's interesting to us, but we don't typically take social benefit in as a big go, no-go criteria. Because again, it's not a requirement for the program. It is a benefit if you have a significant non-commercial benefit, but in the project pitch stage, there's really nothing you can say about social benefit that would lead us to not invite the project. I guess unless your goal is to actively harm people, in which case maybe, but that's not a big factor there. There's a couple of questions around outsourcing of research. Nino asks, I'm a new company. I have to contract out the proposed research. Will NSF fund a grant that contracts out essentially all proposed research? We're not allowed to. There's a rule given to us by Congress that some percentage of the work has to be done by the awardee small business. For phase one SBIR, that is 2/3. So you could only contract out 1/3 of the funding to other entities. And obviously, the idea here is that we want the company that is applying to have some special capability to do the work. If everybody is doing the work is with a different company, we'd rather fund that company, right? That's the idea. Kenneth asks, does your organization fund not-for-profit organizations? We are not allowed to. Again, Congress does not allow us to fund you unless you are a small for-profit U.S. business, meaning fewer than 500 employees. You have a place of business in the U.S., you're going to do all the work in the U.S., and your company is majority owned and operated by U.S. citizens or U.S. permanent residents. I want to thank Jamila for all the great information in chat. That's awesome. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, we only have about 15 minutes, if I'm right about that. I just want to make sure we hit any big common questions here. There's a couple questions about the full proposal deadline, just for people who are looking toward that, past the pitch toward that full proposal. The current solicitation that's open for the full proposal is open through March 4th. That is the deadline. We're hoping to have a new solicitation with more opportunities for the full proposal. That's going to happen, probably it should be out before March 4th, and it should probably give you opportunities throughout most of the rest of the calendar year to submit the full proposal. So don't worry about, submitting the project pitch now and worrying, okay, well, that it's going to close and then I'll have no chance. You'll definitely have a chance later this year to submit a full proposal. Our goal is to have the full proposal open all the time. Sometimes government bureaucracy makes that a little bit difficult, but we're usually able to have the full proposal windows open 10 plus months per year. Okay. There are a couple questions about, let me just find that one real quick. Okay. People asked about ICOR. I think the question is really just to give a quick thumbnail about what ICOR is, but if I'm not understanding the question, please rephrase it. ICOR stands for Innovation Corps. It's actually a sister program to the small business programs at NSF. The NSF ICOR program, the formal program, it's an educational, entrepreneurial education program, typically open mostly to universities. And it basically takes people who apply through a process of customer discovery. The idea being that a group at the university has a new discovery or a new technology, and they're not quite sure if there's a need in the market to create a product based on that technology. They're not quite sure if anybody needs that new thing. ICOR takes the private sector best practice of customer discovery, which is kind of the Steve Blank method, and it takes folks through a 7-week process that lets them do 100 interviews based on that discipline to figure out if it makes sense for the company to move into a potential commercial venture because they've identified a customer and a need in the market. ICOR was, again, created by NSF, but now has kind of expanded where there's a lot of other NS programs that are ICOR programs that we don't directly fund, but that exist at other agencies or other organizations. A lot of them are open to SBIR companies. And so if you want to get support to do customer discovery for a new technology, I would encourage you to reach out to, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to our NSF ICOR program directors, or in some cases, universities have folks who are contact points for ICOR. We take all of our phase 1 SBIR and STTR awardees through a small version of ICOR called the Beat the Odds Bootcamp as well. And our phase 1 awardees also have the opportunity to do the full ICOR if they choose. If you are a new entrepreneur innovator and you're not quite sure about the details of who needs your technology and what their job titles are, what their, where they live, what gets them promoted, those type of details, which are really important for early customers, I would encourage you to either think about ICOR or to think about doing customer discovery yourselves along some lines that kind of follow the Steve Blank method. It is an incredibly powerful tool, especially for new technology entrepreneurs. In my opinion, it's the most valuable innovation in this deep tech startup worlds in the last 20 years. Okay. I see Greg. There's a familiar face. Greg asks, if we have current and pending support at the time of the proposal but are not awarded by the other agency, are we able to revisit and reallocate? So in other words, you've built a proposal, you've allocated certain time, assuming that you had another grant or contract that might get awarded and you've split time. And so now the other grant is not awarded. Can you then change the way you're allocating effort to the NSF proposal? And the answer is yes, you're absolutely welcome to do that. That's typically a discussion that we have in what we call our due diligence phase, which is after you've submitted your full proposal, we think we want to fund it, we're going back and forth asking questions, and at that point you could talk about changes that are needed. There's a few questions about links. I'm going to try to throw some links in, but I'm a little hesitant. The last time I tried to type in the chat, I kicked myself out of here. So if it looks like Jamila's put a couple in. If anybody is able to find the link, there is a link at nsf.gov around ICOR. If anybody is able to put that into chat for me so I don't get myself booted again, that would be great. But yeah, there is a separate ICOR website at NSF for sure. All right, we have, I think we have 10 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jamila, but I'd like to just take a few more questions in person. so to speak, before we sign off here. I know it's probably been a long day for all of you, so thanks for sticking with us. So I'm going to ask Vanessa Enoch first, and then after that, I'm going to do Anand Kumar Kanwarpati as the next two people. Oh, did I miss one? I'm sorry. I didn't see one above Vanessa. I don't actually know how these are listed. I apologize.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, hello.
Okay, wonderful. Hey there. Thank you so much for all your information. I have had technology glitches myself throughout the presentation, but thank you so much. It's been excellent information for what I was able to hear. But my question is, I noticed that there is a March, like March 1st or something like that, March 2nd, 3rd deadline for submitting a proposal. And I did hear you say, I believe, that you have to do a pitch first.
Yes.
In order to get invited to that application deadline.
Yes.
Is there still time now to get in a pitch prior to that deadline, or is it already too late?
No, you could submit it now. Program directors will try to be pretty fast now, but it might be a rush to get a full proposal in. But yeah, you should definitely try. It doesn't hurt anything if you're able to not make that deadline. Yeah, you still have the invitation for a year, so. Yeah, you could definitely try now.
And then, okay, wonderful. And then the other question is, I can't find information on the pitch. Like that's the most important part to me is when I got booted out and couldn't hear anying. And you were talking about the pitch.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry that.
So where do I go to?
Yes. I had the slide up, but let me find. I think Jamila put in chat a link to the full proposal, but I'm guessing the link that she put in chat at 4:31 will take you to that. The best place to go is honestly if you go to our website, seedfund.nsf.gov. If you go there and you go to the How It Works tab, you'll see everything about the pitch. I wonder if I can even share that now.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm hesitating to do that just because I'm worried about glitches, but let me see here.
Yeah, I understand. I'm having that same trouble. So you're saying, okay, go to your website and repeat that one more time.
It's the actual direct page is seedfunds.nsf.gov /project-pitch.
Okay. /project-pitch. Okay.
Correct. Yep. I will show you what that even looks like. I'm feeling squirrely here. One second. Yeah, so this is what that page looks like. And this is all the information, and then there's a link at the bottom if you're seeing this to submit the project pitch directly. But let me scroll up, and this is what the top of the page looks like. So.
I don't see the URL on there. Is it on there?
Yeah, I think it's not showing here. It's definitely there in my website, but I don't think it's showing the whole browser. So yeah. Yeah, the URL is something that, again, I believe it's in the chat already, but I'd have to scroll if I saw it. Yeah, it looks like it's in the chat just recently. People just put it back in. So.
What time did you say it was in there again?
It's right now. Just came back in again.
Oh, it's in there now. Oh, perfect. Okay, thank
you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Sam, for doing that. I appreciate it.
Definitely. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. And I said, yes, hello.
Thank you for taking this question. I think you've answered one of the questions that I had already, which is there enough time still to get into a full proposal if we just do a project pitch now? I think I took your answer to mean that it's tight, but no harm in trying, right?
Correct.
So we'll do that.
Yep.
The other question I had was, there are other proposals that we're working on to be able to get.
Oh, did I lose you?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you.
Yeah. Through Department of Energy, in terms of matching funds, are we able to use some of these to supplement? Because some of those require matching funds outside of the Department of Energy, but would it be considered government funds as well? Would there be some conflict there?
You'd have to ask them that. I'm not sure what their rules are. We have only one program where there's a matching fund requirement, and it's our Phase 2B program. And typically, government grants don't qualify for our program, but they might accept our award as matching funds for their program. You'd have to ask them.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. In our process at any given time. So I just want to make sure I reiterate that. Your company is expected, if you submit a pitch, if you're not invited, then you can submit another pitch the next window. If you are invited, the understanding is that once you have that invitation, the next thing that you're going to do is submit a full proposal and wait for our process to get the outcome of that full proposal. Only then would you be able to submit a second pitch, right? So we want you to be doing one thing at a time in our process. I know that's frustrating for some folks. They want to try a bunch of different things, throw a bunch of things out and see what sticks. The reason we do things this way is we have a lot of experience working with companies, and we have seen pretty consistently that the big commercial successes have to focus on doing one thing well. We had a time at NSF where we allowed multiple proposals from the same companies. We let them come in and submit up to 4 proposals or more at the same time. And the amount of success, both in getting the award and in being commercially successful, was dramatically higher for the companies that only submitted one proposal. And so we really do think that that is the best way for startups in the deep technology space to think about commercializing. That's why we have these rules. That makes sense. Okay, I think we're almost out of time. I'm going to take one more person on video here, and if Precious Badran, if you're there, you're our final act here, if you're willing to come up on stage. Maybe no Precious. We'll go to somebody else in a second. Maybe people are leaving. Okay. Let's go to Cecile Orquiola. Sorry about that. Cecile, I'll push the button and see if you can come up and ask your question. Looks like no Cecile either. All right, one more try and then we'll just call it a day. Let's see. Vito Quaranta. Let's see if you're still around. Feel like maybe something's not working here, or maybe it's just too late in the day. I'll give any of those 3 folks a chance, one more minute, and if not, we'll sign off here. Last thing I'll say is people are still asking. I don't think this is recorded. I think that the host said that it's not being recorded. I'm going to throw my email into chat, hopefully not get kicked off. And if you need this copy of the slides, I will send it.